welcome back to EAK TV. We're here at ANON Blockchain Summit 2019, the inaugural blockchain event in Vienna, the flagship event of Vienna Blockchain Week, and I'm delighted to have Chris Miess with us, the founder of Iconic Capital. Welcome to the show.
Thanks very much for having me. Nice to be here.
Yeah, nice to be here. So what's it like seeing such a great, vibrant crypto community in your home country?
It's amazing. Can I just take that? Yeah. It's really good to see so many people still being interested in crypto, despite of the market not being ideal. Well, I say that even though Bitcoin went up 15% today. Let's see whether it's going to be a more sustainable trend shift or not. But for Austria, it's a great thing to have such a conference. It shows the interest of Austrians and beyond in the sector. And like I said, especially in these market conditions, great that so many interesting speakers, so many interesting startups, companies, experts came along to join.
Perfect. Okay, so can you tell us a little bit more about yourself for the viewers that are wondering? Tell us more about Iconic Capital. I understand you're kind of a serial advisor, advisor for a number of different projects. So tell us more about, Iconic Capital and what you guys are trying to achieve.
Sure. Before founding Iconic Capital, I was the CFO of 10x. We founded 10x in Singapore a few years ago now. Got a bit famous for having the largest ICO in Asia, 80 million at the time. Obviously, very different times now. So after 10x, what I did is I founded a fund called Iconic Capital. With Iconic Capital, we invest, but we also advise projects. We invest in tokens and equity, and we advise startups on where to best position themselves in the blockchain ecosystem, where in the value chain, and also how to raise their funds, ICOs, STOs, IEOs, a lot of different terms out there. But we also advise corporates on how to use blockchain technology for their existing business models. And in Austria, I'm lucky that I'm able to advise the Austrian government on blockchain topics.
Fantastic. Okay, so you've got a lot going on. Yeah, exactly. So let's start with Iconic Capital. So I understand you've invested in a number of successful projects, and you're continuing to invest. From our side, we're seeing many projects coming to us now, kind of at pre-seed phase, which is a little bit different to back in the ICO days when they were aiming more at the retail kind of investors. How does Iconic Capital, identify a project, and what projects do you like to invest in?
Historically, we have mostly invested in infrastructure projects. Projects like EOS, projects like Icon. So a bit like infrastructure projects, but also on a DApp level, we've invested in some projects. We have a preference for infra projects, where I would even count companies like QuantStamp on infrastructure level in a way that maybe not in terms of their token model, but in terms of the service they provide for the blockchain industry.
So you mentioned that you are the CFO of 10x. You guys raised, was it 80 million in the ICO days? What do you think about the IEOs? You mentioned an initial exchange offering. Do you think that could be a reason of why the market's had a comeback? I know OKX are jumping on board and a number of other exchanges. What effect do you think that's going to have on the market?
Yeah. I think there's two different things going on. One is the continuous building of a floor in the crypto prices. You've seen Bitcoin hovering around $4,000 for a long time now. People are complaining about that, but for us, we see that as a good thing, because the longer we have that phase, the more stable and the more sustainable the growth trend is going to be. So the longer we have that foundation phase now, the better the upward trend is going to be, and the more sustained, in our opinion. And then IEOs that you alluded to, initial exchange offerings, are a huge new trend. As of now, I don't think they're strong enough to move the market as a whole. Today we're at around $160 billion in market cap. Most IEOs are raising right now in between 5 and 10 million. That's not significant enough yet in order to move the whole market, but I definitely see it as a huge trend, but also with pros and cons. Also a big step towards centralization, which is, in my opinion, a little bit against the core of the movement.
So, I mean, we come across, I'm sure you come across loads and loads and loads of projects looking for investment. Everyone's looking for investment. How do you filter out those that are looking for investment, and how does somebody actually get an attention of somebody like you?
Nowadays, there's, as you say, so many projects out there, so it helps a lot if they come via referrals. If you have some trusted partners, other funds or trusted advisors or trusted ecosystem players like you guys, for example. Yeah, you probably only work with the best projects out there. So if they come referred from somebody like you, then obviously you take a closer look at them compared to just a cold email, for example. Generally, what we look at, it's quite standard. It's very much the team. It's the business model. Then obviously, does that project even need a token or not? You know, there's a lot of projects out there that we all know of that fact that they just use the token in order to raise funds. Fair enough. Think of that what you want. We don't think it's the right thing to do, and we don't think it's very possible anymore nowadays anyway. So the problem has kind of solved itself to a degree. So we had team, we had business model, also competitors. Are there companies out there that have been in the space for longer? If you wanted to, I don't know, rival Golem, then it's probably quite hard because they have had a head start for a few years now and a very strong developer team, to just pick an example. I don't know, if you were to create the new Ethereum, obviously, it would be very hard. And even if you raise, say, $4 billion, it would still be a very hard task to do so.
So just looking at the news cycle in the last few weeks, we've seen Facebook announce a coin, JP Morgan announce a coin. I guess us maximalists would probably roll our eyes at those kind of things. But what's your opinion on these kind of bigger institutions getting in on the cryptocurrency hype?
For us, it has two sides. One side being a step towards centralization, which is not, like I said, it's not the original thought of the movement. It's not the ethos. So it's not the idea behind cryptocurrencies and decentralized money in the first instance. On the flip side of the coin, it's actually quite good for adoption. A lot of people will, whether they know or not, in the background of, say, Amazon or Facebook or as you said, JPM, use cryptocurrencies, partly without even knowing. What's going to happen is it's going to drive adoption, and it's going to help cryptocurrency in the long run. But I'm very skeptical about a more and more centralized version of cryptocurrencies. Even, JP Morgan is a whole different example with, saying, Jamie Dimon saying very skeptical of cryptocurrencies, then JPM creating their own cryptocurrency. It's a bit... people are unsure what to think of that mixed messaging out there. Facebook obviously would drive huge adoption, but like I said, at the cost of centralization.
Okay, so looking at the future, I don't say the near future, we don't want to get too far in the future, but let's talk about, potentially, Lightning Network is currently hitting, all-time highs in terms of the amount of transactions they're doing. We've got Trinity for Neo 3.0 is coming out in the next year or so, and then you've got a Plasma for Ethereum. What are you most excited about? In terms of scalability, do you actually think that these options are actually going to really help scale the blockchain? Do you actually feel like they're actually coming soon? I know Ethereum's constantly delaying their upgrades, and just how do you see this actually affecting the blockchain market if it is a success?
Overall, I think we're moving in the right direction. I agree. It's being delayed way too often, and it's being a little bit unclear in the messaging as well. I think a lot of people are getting upset, not only by the markets, but also by the fact that we keep saying the next update is coming, everything will be perfect then, and it just gets pushed out more and more. I'm also not sure whether the big projects that come to mind, some of the ones you mentioned, are really the solution for everything, or whether we have more of a patchwork approach in the future, where you won't have that single project or protocol that's going to solve all our scalability issues, or whether we have a bit of a patchwork thing where in this instance or in this protocol or in between those guys, you need this patch, and here you need this patch. One project that we invested in, for example, is a Singaporean sharding scalability project called Silica that we believe in a lot. And so we don't really see that winner takes it all kind of network externalities scenario here. We believe in a lot of different scaling solutions to be coexistent in the future at the same time.
So I know interoperability is a big buzzword right now. I know Charles Hoskinson Cardano constantly talking about this, and I agree with you. I think there isn't going to be one big winner. I think you're going to be sharing that across various different blockchains. and how they interact is going to be so important. So what about you, Chris? Like, what are you actually working on right now? So I know at a high level, you're an advisor and you run Iconic Capital, but like right now, like what projects, not necessarily crypto projects, but what projects personally do you have going on, and what are your goals and aims right now?
Right now, I'm very much involved in the advisory work with the Austrian government. Austria being my birthplace and my mother country, so to speak, I'm very identifying myself a lot with this place, and I'm trying to push Austria on the crypto map, on the blockchain map forward. Also trying to drive regulation here, so we're going to be hopefully ahead of the curve in the security token game. Security tokens is something that I've been waiting for and pushing for a long time. We're all a bit, I don't know. We can't wait until security tokens are a bit more, on the radar and liquid, and we can trade them, and whether we have certain regulations around it. I think for Europe, European passporting would be super important, that you do it in one European nation and then you can passport it throughout every nation. In theory, if you do a security token now in Europe, you need a legal opinion for each and every single one country in Europe in order to offer your token. That's something that we have to rectify. Other than the government advisory, I keep doing what I do. I advise ICO projects, STO projects, IO projects as well, and we invest in interesting blockchain projects out there, both equity and tokens.
Okay, so you just mentioned that you're advising the Austrian government on a number of the future technologies, including blockchain. So how are they putting into practice your advice, and how open are they to your advice? Because obviously you're very experienced in this space.
So what I had to learn, first of all, is that government works very different from the private sector. In blockchain, or in private sector in general, and in blockchain in particular, things move very, very fast. Right? You have a project like we did with 10x, right? We wrote that white paper in 2 or 3 days. We published it. We had our token sale. In 7 minutes, we were sold out. The government sector works completely different. In the government, everything is very slow because it's a democratic process, which is a good thing per se. But when it comes to technology and innovation, you're always the reactionary part. You're always one step behind. So the goal here is to anticipate new movements. It's one thing to regulate ICOs, but it's another thing to look ahead and actually create an ecosystem and a regulation for security tokens that are yet to come. ICOs are in the past. Security tokens are in the present to future. So I think the right thing to do for a government is to kind of run where the ball is going to be and not where it is now.
Nice, like a through ball, if you like your football.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so is there anything at all that you'd like to share, or any updates, or anything that you'd like to share with our followers today?
Yeah, I mean, to many people, like many of my friends and many of my colleagues, we've been through maybe a rough 1 or 2 years, depending on where you were positioned with your investments. But a big thank you to everybody that stayed with the space throughout of that time. I'm sure it will pay off in the long run, but in the short term, I know it can be very frustrating. But so far, whoever has stayed on board has always has never regretted it. So thanks for bearing with us in the space. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That was Chris Miess from Iconic Capital. Thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe below. That's EAK TV.